This is Blake out of North Carolina, CMX host. We also have Jamie Johnson, was out of Sweden, back to Scotland, from Spotify, does a lot of amazing stuff. And then for today, we'll get to in just a second, Richard Millington, who has a new book out. If you're doing anything this year, you have to get the book. So let me get the quick presentation out of the way so that we can get to the fun and exciting stuff. All right, so I think everybody can see my screen. Yep. All right. So for today, if you're joining us, one of the sort of amazing figures in community for a long time has been Richard Millington. So we've got a lot of people working in community, but Richard also gives back a lot of his learnings, like Matt Meckham had said. So just amazing to get him here. His books are invaluable. And just what I would say for everybody working in the community profession, make learning and upskilling at least like your own personal R&D. 20%, 10% of your time, always getting that community gym time to be learning. So when you get a book like Richard Millington, it's like basically there's courses out there, $5,000, $10,000, right? MBA type courses. You're getting something like that in book form for like 10 or 20 bucks, right? So it's a huge, huge cost saving. It's an amazing investment for basically nothing to get a book like that. Huge amount of upskilling. It's summertime, huge opportunity to read. Also, thanks to Jamie for setting up this CMX Book Club tour so that we could talk about Richard's latest book, Build Your Community. And it's great that we've got the CMX family here. And just to say, like the CMX family, we've got basically 50 chapters around the world. These are basically all run by our CMX hosts like me. Very exciting. And that's pretty much it on my side. Let me stop sharing my screen. The only other thing I'll say is that hot off the press at the Back to the Future event next week at Bevy at 5 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to have Bob Gale, one of the creators of Back to the Future, live with us. I'm going to be talking Back to the Future stuff, so be sure to join that. And without further ado, I will turn it over to the guest of honor, Richard Millington and Jamie.
Hey, everyone.
Thanks, Blake. Great intro. Good sell for Richard's book, which is very, very true. So I just want to say first, Richard, congrats on the book. I think you've kind of just got your hands on it quite recently, right?
Yeah, relatively. We had a couple of delays on the publisher side, but yeah, the book's all out now. Please buy copies for your friends, families. Christmas is coming up as well, so they make great Christmas gifts. So yeah,
very good. Well, it's a really positive book. I mean, I think that was something that I noticed as well, that there's lots of language, that's championing kind of positive communities and the impact that we can have. I wondered, like, how conscious were you of kind of managing that tone as you worked through it, or was it something that you kind of added on at the end once you'd got the meat of the book down?
I try to be very pragmatic about the community space. I mean, there's people in our field that we know that are very that advocate for the field. They try to grow it. They try to bring more companies into it. They stress the importance of building online communities. I try to be very pragmatic. I think for some organizations, a community is a great idea, but not for every kind of organization. So I try to be positive, but not hyperbolic. And I think it's really important right now in the community space to find that balance, because I feel at times we get a little too hyperbolic, and it means we're drifting away from reality. And we're being a little bit absolutist at times. Community is the future of everything, or things like that. I don't believe that. I think communities are a very important tool, but they are one of many tools that an organization can pursue. And the real challenge, I think, in the work we're doing today is to think like a pragmatist about our work. Realistically, what are the things that our communities can do that no one else can actually do, or nothing else can actually do? What is the best use for a community, and what is the right context, the right time, the right situation? These are the kind of questions that I try to answer in the book. So it's definitely not a hyperbolic book, but I try to make it as practical and as pragmatic as it can possibly be.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly actionable, right? Like, each chapter has a summary and a checklist. You know, you're churning out regular blog posts. I think everyone knows that you are pragmatic that way, like very practical and helping us all, you know, really focus on the practicalities of what we're doing. I wonder, just in terms of like, especially with the blog posts and things, and now having done like long form writing with your books, is there a crossover between those two things? Do you sit down and write like a whole bunch of stuff in one day, or are you constantly writing little things down? What's that process like for you?
Yeah, the process of writing a book. So the hard part isn't the writing, it's the research. Like the actual writing part of a book. I mean, it sounds like, I think it's like 70,000 words, which sounds like a lot. But honestly, if you sit down today, you can write 1,000 words in 20 minutes or so, you know, if you just sat down and wrote and wrote and wrote. The hard part is the research side. Like the hard part is the building up the case studies, analyzing the data, collecting that data, getting the permission to use these case studies, getting the permission to use the screenshots. And so for me, I spend a lot of time. So first off, when I'm writing a book, the first thing to do is begin with a question. Like, what is the question this book is answering today? You know, what is because I felt originally Buzzing Communities, my first book, is out of date in some ways today. And I feel like a lot of the things I believed back then, I don't quite believe now. I think I was more an absolutist then. And now I've had a lot of bitter experience. So if you read Buzzing Communities, my first book, there'll be things in there like, you know, every community should have a powerful sense of community, and we need that sense of belonging. But the reality is, a lot of brand communities, and most brand communities, that people just want information as quickly as possible. And so it's about, you know, being realistic about how communities function today. So a couple of things I do. One, I have a set list of questions to begin with. You know, things like, does gamification work? Now, we can all find case studies. We can all find people speaking at events that share, hey, I implemented this and it looks good. But it's impossible to know if it worked because of that, or it just happened to be something they did alongside it. And so the first thing I do is reach out and recruit a few people, usually PhD graduates or students. They cost around £20 an hour because they're overqualified for any other role, to be honest. But they are so good at doing a full literature review on any topic. So for a few £100, I get like all the research, you know, highlighting what works and what doesn't work. And you see that reflected in the book. So it's a whole summary about what the pros and cons, and it's a nuance. It's always a nuanced view. And I try to represent that. And then I start looking for case studies of success and failure as well. I ask around. There's a lot of like common examples that you see used in every single book. I try to avoid them because I think we know them already. So I try to see what else is out there, who's doing things really well, what's interesting, and then write about that. And then there's the data side as well. What I've been really working hard on doing the last couple of years is trying to build a data set of so many different kinds of communities, scraping the posts, analyzing them, and understanding what is, you know, how many members are actually present in most of the online communities today. What is the average retention rate like? So what is the typical average time to first response? So these kind of things inform the narrative, because I think anyone can fill a book with their opinions. It's another thing to have that data, have the research, and then source it upon stuff that actually works. And so that's the hard part. The actual writing process, I sit down about an hour or 2 hours every morning. I write a few hundred to maybe 1,000 words. I get through the first draft. Once that draft is done, then I send it to the publisher. They tell me how bad it is, and then we work on making it good.
That's really interesting. I think I wasn't aware of the use of PhD students. I was going to ask you how much theory is included, and how much you did that yourself. So that's interesting.
Yeah, the research is mostly on their side. Like I go through I have notifications for all the academic articles on community. So I get the summaries and I go through them sometimes. But to have someone you can reach out to that, for them, it's really easy to do because they type a few terms into a database that I give them, and then they summarize the results. And, you know, it's good money for them. They can still do their PhD. And it's one of the easiest book hacks that I know. Like if you're writing a book and you want to do some research on it, yeah, I'd recommend it.
And have those things converged around the data scraping too? Do you pull people in to help analyze the data?
No, originally the first time we did this was with a tool called Community Analytics. But now we pull the data ourselves. So there's someone that I work with that pulls the data in, and then I've learned the skills to be able to analyze and visualize that data myself. I'm still learning, but I like learning that skill. It's kind of a fun hobby to do. So that work is primarily me with help on the scraping. But some platforms, your platform actually got very difficult to scrape data from. If you notice in the new data set that we released, you folks changed something about the Spotify display of posts, so it made it more difficult. So
interesting. I was going to say you probably have potentially a better handle than many of these brand communities have on their own data sets, having done a lot of this work.
I've been at so many events where there's a speaker on stage talking about, how great they're doing. And I can look at the data for the past year and I'm like, no, honestly, that's not reflected in the data. And of course, I don't want to say that, but I'm way more skeptical of a lot of talks that are given at events at this point because they don't have the data to back them up. And a lot of the case studies that are presented simply don't align with the data I'm seeing. And so there are some communities that are really well run, and you can see that in the data at the large scale, at the small scale. And there's some that are get a lot of attention, but aren't as well run as what people think they are.
Interesting. So one other thing just to think about with the book, and for those that maybe haven't got it yet, I've been through it and it feels like it can work for complete beginners as well as, kind of more seasoned pros. Did you have a specific audience, or was that your goal to try and reach all levels?
I did my first book, Buzzing Communities. It's just for people that were taking the course that we did. This was back in 2012. And it was amazing. It had these people that are buying it for their church congregations and teachers that were buying it for their classroom. It was wow, it's a much bigger audience. And then for my last book, The Indispensable Community, I was like, okay, I'm just going to focus on brand communities and try and make some big success. And it didn't sell anywhere near as many copies. And so I was like, well, this time around, it makes sense to have a broader focus. So I think, honestly, brand communities are the primary audience for the book, because I think that's where most of my audience is. It's where we get most of our work from. But there's also a lot in there that tries to appeal to that broad audience as well. If you're just managing a WhatsApp group, most of the principles still apply. And I've tried to make it accessible in that domain as well, because I think there's a bigger audience there. And generally speaking, if, for almost every type of book, you kind of want to have as many people reading it as possible.
Interesting. You give a lot back to the industry, right? And obviously this book is an example. I wondered, you're like the perfect community member who contributes all of this information, right? Gives all the stuff. You're like, why is he doing that? What's he getting out of this? I wondered though, is there a conscious choice about how much you do share or don't share? Obviously you've got a business, lots of people have got their own goals and stuff, but you do share a lot back, and it seems to be a bit of an ethos of yours. So yeah, is there any decisions that you make around what you share or not share?
I think there's an answer, and then there's a bigger point here that's worth people reflecting on. For me, the entire business I have grew from the blog. Originally, I just began blogging about online communities. My first blog posts were about the gaming sector online communities way back whenever. And then that gradually began hitting search traffic, and then more people began engaging with that. And then I began getting clients as a result of that. I did an internship with Seth Godin way back in the day, and that helped as well. But now most of my work is probably 50-50. It's around 50% from speaking events and then 50% from the blog. So I feel like, yeah, maybe I give a lot back, but I benefit a lot from that as well. Like, there's people on this call that I could just go through this list. There's people that have been clients of mine on this list today solely because I'm guessing they found me through the blog or they found me because events I've spoken at. And so I think, yeah, there's this great post by Stack Overflow a while ago where they're talking about who are the most successful developers on their site. And they're like, the people that share the most benefit the most. And I think that's true as well. And I think that's fantastic. I do think there's a broader point here, which is if you want people building a reputation, it's harder to do that within a hosted community today than what it used to be. I mean, with some of the clients I'm working with, like SAP, for example, or Sephora I've been working with recently, it's harder to get people to go to a defined hosted community and build a reputation there compared with a place where they can build a following that's theirs, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, or their own blog. And I think there's a bigger challenge there that we have to solve, where communities have to be better at integrating that, not competing with it, but saying, hey, you can post your blog on Medium if you want to, and if you let us post it in your community, we'll increase your following in the audience. And I think there's a bigger opportunity there that we have to be aware of. So whilst I'd love to say, yeah, I'm giving everything back, honestly, it benefits me so much. All of my clients come from there. And I think what I try to do with the blog as well is try and make it as practical as possible. There are people I've seen that start blogs and they're very long-winded and very unspecific. And I find it's easier to give people short tips in a daily email. And every now and then I get people that come to me and goes, hey, this isn't SEO friendly at all. And for me, I'm like, I don't care. It's working. It's also like in the rhythm of how I work now as well. So yeah, I try to do like bigger posts every now and then that share some detailed breakdowns, case studies, guides, or things like that.
Yeah, very interesting. And yeah, obviously at CMX, it's something we thrive on, is trying to share our learning, share best practice. So it's great to hear you say that. One final point, just on kind of something you mentioned at the beginning of the book, that your journey into community was through gaming, it was doing something that you loved. And I've heard this story a lot from people that work in the industry. And people go on and they get jobs, they have careers, but I don't hear it all the time. And I know that you've obviously got so many different communities and clients. So is it something you see a lot, that sort of journey?
Well, we could ask people here, like how many of you that are watching this now drifted into this role? Just a quick, yes or no. And while they're answering, I can say, yeah, I think the majority of people drifted into it. I'm guessing it from another field. Gaming, a lot of people have a gaming background. Like I was talking to David Spinks about this. He's got that Tony Hawk background, how he got into the space. And I think gaming is particularly unique because there's a natural community aspect to it. When you play games with other people, it's more exciting. And gaming is always the canary in the coal mine, I think. Like it's so far ahead of a lot of the other fields, for better or worse. And so, yeah, I think there's a natural tendency for people to begin there, or in the developer space as well. A lot of developers drift into the community world accidentally. But yeah, we're seeing it here. Almost everyone drifted into it from different fields.
Yeah. Likewise, yeah, for sure. And you mentioned this very quickly there before, but your internship with Seth Godin, I'd love to know more about what that was like, what it was kind of like working around him. A lot of us have probably read at least one or two of his books, and it must have come to you quite an early point in your career. So yeah, just curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, I want to be respectful of his privacy when I talk about this as well. Yes, this was back in 2009, I think. So I just graduated. I flew to New York for a couple of months because I got this internship, which I got by phoning him up. Apparently, no one does that. But I found his phone number somewhere, and I think I cold called him. Yeah, and it was like an amazing experience. Seth is one of those few people who I think is a genius at what they do, and they see things in a really with a clarity that very few people do. So I think I learned a lot from that. I did some work on the tribes. He had the tribes book that was coming out at the time, did some work on that. Then he had another community, Squidoo, I think it was called, he was working on. And I did some work on that. But just, yeah, being around Seth is amazing. Working with him is amazing. Having his testimonial on the book was amazing as well. I was really, really thrilled that he did that. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So asking you a few questions then specifically about things that are in the book as of now, generalized away. One of the things I noticed quite quickly, and this is a question that comes up, right? Some of these are going to be questions you've heard 100 times, but I'll try and ask them in a slightly different way.
Sure.
But in terms of like ROI, right? So you make a good comment in there that you need to focus more on holistic value of community, and that often builders kind of get dead-ended or focused on pure ROI. So you impact. And I think that's a really important point, this ability to kind of spot opportunity and find ways that community can support others' goals. So could you tell us a little bit about, what you mean by visible impact?
Yeah, this is the journey I think a lot of us are going on, where a lot of people, when they get involved in online communities, they have this perspective, which is, I don't need to prove the ROI. It's so obvious community has an amazing ROI. But it's obvious to you, not to everyone else that you work with. Like, it's just obvious to you. And then for me, I began there. Then, like with a lot of the work I was doing, it's more about proving the return on investment, the ROI. And then when I researched my last book, did like 100 interviews for that. And there's this really weird thing that's coming up in all of the interviews, which was almost everyone saying is critical to prove the ROI of their community, but no one could actually do it. Some people had some dodgy customer support formula that they were using, but almost no one could do it. What they were looking at was the impact. And the impact of things, what is the impact of the community that helps the people that you work with? I've worked with communities of, say, sales professionals, where when we began asking people what they needed were like templates that they could use, And when my friend Sam used to work at the Bug Crowd online community, and he realized that these people needed like testimonials from the communities, case studies, these kind of things that sales professionals could use. Sometimes the engineering team just needs like useful ideas that they can use right now today. Sometimes people just want an immediate piece of feedback or place where they can ask a quick question and get that immediate impact today. And so there are some situations where people want a pure dollar value ROI metric that they can use, but it's really rare. What really happens is that people just want visible evidence that the community is helping the organization achieve its goals. And those goals aren't always a clear dollar value. It's often things like, is it helping us achieve digital transformation? Is it improving satisfaction of our customers? Is it giving us a competitive advantage? Is it providing us with marketing material that we can use? Is it providing us with case studies we can use? Are members advocating for us on the price comparison sites or the product comparison sites? I mean, there's companies like QuickBase, for example. They had like a few dozen members leave the best reviews on Trust Radius and other sites like that, and they become the #1 like product in their category that they're in. And that's incredible. They must have got millions of dollars out of that. And all they had to do was persuade a few dozen of their community members to leave those reviews. So what I'm talking about isn't the ROI in a dollar value metric, because I think you can do it, but it's very hard to do. And most people, if they don't think that your figures are high enough, they just disregard the figures entirely. One of my clients really recently had this really high customer support figure, and they had to revise it down because the figure was too high. And that's nuts when you think about it. You don't think what is the outcome and then design a methodology to match. That's absolutely nuts. But that's the situation that we're in. So I think it's really important to be very aware what is the broader strategy of the organization. And I feel like I'm saying things that have been said a lot of times before. And then being really specific. What are the visible results of your community? And I think we do very well when we can talk about people that we've helped. We can talk about the improvement in the satisfaction score. We do less well when we talk about loyalty. I think that's a trap that tends to, be of particular concern.
Yeah, and I think like it's sometimes when you're, needing to show the success of your work, say you're in a brand community, you can focus on this dollar value, but actually it's going to be your peers and the other teams and departments in the company that if they're getting value from it, then that's going to help you maintain the success of the community, So a new boss or a new CEO can come in and they can ask for a dollar value, but really they're probably going to look around the organization and see how useful it is to everyone. That's going to be a big part of their assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the key thing first with any client I try to work with is figure out what is the overriding strategy of the organization. And sometimes there isn't one, or there's several, or people haven't all agreed on one, depending upon how well the organization itself is run. And I mean, organizations are so complex, and I don't feel we often account for how difficult each stakeholder can be. Like I remember speaking with a customer support, it was like the VP of support of one company once, highlighting how the community can reduce the support costs, and they were terrified of this. It means that their budget would be cut. And okay, they're not thinking in the best interest of the organization, but that's the reality. How do you work with that? I mean, so organizations are way more complex, and it's often about what is the best compromise you can make so the community can deliver the best value within the environment you're in, not imagining you're in some fancy world where you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, good advice. So jumping around a little bit, surveys. So, as a community builder, often, more often than not in quite a small team, sometimes a team of one, and you have to do a hell of a lot of different things. And one of the things you talk about, which is so important, and you said it already today, is about your research, right? Getting to understand the data, but also your audience, figuring out the segments, all the rest of it. Now, this is hard. And like for a user researcher, if you have a user researcher team, fantastic. Maybe you can't get their time. More likely you don't have one and you're trying to do it yourself. So I totally agree. And, when you spend the effort, trying to understand your audience, it has huge benefits in ways that you just don't expect as well. So when it comes to surveys and interviews, do you have any tips, any quick things that people could take away?
Quick things, not so much. So I'll go like an intermediate length thing. I think for surveys, it's very easy to bias the results that you're getting. I think you can get the way you phrase questions and the way you ask questions can align it to confirm what you want in the first place, and you've got to go deeper than that. So for me, most of the surveys I do, if I'm allowed to, I use SurveyMonkey, and you can find templates. If I go to, hold on, let me just type in the link here. If you go to phoebe.com/buildyourcommunity, I think that link works. Someone can test it. But if you go to that link today, you can find like the templates we use. You can find the interview questions that we use, and you can find all the tools that we use. The challenge isn't just getting data; it's using that data itself. So one of the stories I share in the book was a community of teachers that I worked with once, and I was the third consultant that was brought into this project. And the community had been launched about 5 years ago, and it was struggling, and it was in a very rapid decline. And the two consultants before me had looked at the data, done the interviews, done the surveys, and what they discovered is that teachers, wait for it, are really busy, and they're too busy to participate in a community. Now, two things about that. One is that everyone says they are too busy, like every audience. I was in a meeting with AARP once, like the American Association of Retired Professionals, I think it's called. Even they said that their audience was too busy. And so everyone says they're too busy. It's a priority issue. Second, their recommendations have been to make the community easier to use, require less time. But what they're doing is that they're seeing the data, but they're not actually interpreting it the right way. Making it easier to use doesn't increase someone's motivation to participate in the community. What we did was made the community a place for teachers to share their time-saving tips. Now, suddenly, you've got a community that is useful to your members. You've heard what members are saying, and then you are aligning your actions towards what they want. And that's when the community reversed its decline and began to rise. And I think within 6 months or so, it surpassed its peak activity years before. So it's not just about gathering the data, it's about using that data exactly the right way, being able to interpret it the right way. And if there's, I don't want to be too, I want to be humble here to a certain degree because it's a British trait, but if there's any magic in the work that I do, I think it's being able to look at the data and experience and combine it to produce a really compelling community experience. Because I think too often we use data to just confirm what we want to hear in the first place. And the way that we phrase questions, I see it all the time with clients. The way we phrase questions can be designed to get exactly the answers that we want. And so you've got to be really careful you're not giving people the answers that you want to hear, but you're coming at it from scratch. And honestly, if you want to do really great experiences, use the Mural app, so mural.co. Have a whiteboarding session. Invite 20 of your members to it and just ask them, what are you looking for in a community? What's stopping you? And get them collaborating and engaging with one another. Install the Hotjar tool onto your site. I've been doing this this week, and I've done it with clients before, looking at hundreds of recordings of people going through your online community, seeing exactly what they click on, seeing exactly what they use. And this will give you a level of insight that you simply can't get from anywhere else. So surveys and interviews are good if you're designing the concept, but I would go beyond that. I really think you've got to look at whiteboarding sessions. I really think you've got to use Hotjar or Crazy Egg, one of those tools, and then really have a deep understanding of what members are actually doing.
Yeah, and I think certainly experienced that where you start with your survey and they're all leading questions. You got all these assumptions you're trying to prove or not. And the process was really just taking all of that out and going back to asking, much more open questions and much more personal to the users. Like, why are they there? What are their overall goals and motivations? What are they hoping to achieve?
Yeah, I want to flag one big common mistake. If you ask members, do you want X? They're going to say yes, because what's the downside to saying no? It doesn't cost them anything. You have to say, do you want X or Y? Or how much time would you spend on X? You have to put a cost to the things that they want. Otherwise, they're just going to say yes to every single thing. So you don't get good research by asking people if they want something, because they always say yes. It's about their prioritization or how much time they're going to spend on it or those kind of things. You get much better information if you do that.
Yeah. And just on that point, the AARP, so they're retired, but they still don't have time. That's pretty worrying, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the point. Like, no one feels that they have time. Like, no one has extra time in their day. No one is spending time during the day staring at a blank wall. They're always doing things. So, we make time if it's relevant enough in the moment today.
One other thing that really stuck out for me was a specific bit of data that you had, which was welcome threads in communities.
Yes.
You say, right, so I'll just read out kind of what you wrote, but members who replied to a non-welcome discussion as their first contribution created an average of just 2 discussions in the community and posted an average of 9 comments in total. Can't remember over the time period that was. Members who replied in a welcome discussion in their first action contributed an average of 7.7 discussions and created a remarkable 149 comments. This is pretty astounding.
Yeah, it's one of the times where what I thought was proven wrong. So before that, you can find blog posts I've written where I'm like, welcome threads are a bad idea. They're like filled with junk. Don't do them. You can find posts. I don't remove posts. But I do try to update my thinking when there's new data that comes out, right? So yeah, this was a data set, one of the original ones. It's pulled from like 200 discourse sites, I think. We identified welcome discussions that were in there. We looked to see if people participated in there, stayed for longer than people that didn't. And it's, sure, there might be a cause and effect thing here. Like people that participate in a welcome discussion might be more likely anyway. I'm not sure that's true. I think people that participate in a welcome discussion are more likely to stay for longer in a community and be more engaged. But I think there's so many pieces, there's so many small wins like that. And I think you can optimize so many things, about your community just by knowing what the benchmarks are, by knowing what other online communities are doing, and having data that's accessible like that. I think that really, really helps.
Yeah, and I guess there's that. It's those first interactions which are so important. So
Yeah,
it makes it. I know that cause and effect thing is always difficult to attribute, but there's definitely something about that personal touch or that personal moment which makes all the difference. Yeah. We don't have a welcome thread, so that is something I'm going to look at. So what else? So one other thing you talked about was this idea of like going for size and how mistake. I really liked what you wrote, which was, have you ever been in a successful group and wished it was bigger? Have you spent time in a local community you enjoyed and wished there were more people in it? So there's this idea of like small's okay and could be better. And this brought back the debate you had with David Spinks not that long ago. So a little tongue in cheek, but there's still something quite fundamental, like you said at the beginning, around, are people coming for information or are actually coming to make a connection? And so there's this is where in the book you start to talk about the kind of top 1% in the community, who give the most. And in some ways, that's maybe where the real community is, and they're the ones that you should invest the most in. I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about this idea of super users, and they're not necessarily the biggest contributors, or are they? And like, not everyone wants to be in a formal program. Some people will still give lots in a community without being there. But yeah, anything you'd like to say around this top 1% and kind of how to handle them?
Yeah, I'm going to tackle a couple of things here. The first one is that there's this trend. Everyone wants more engagement and activity in their community, except the members that are in it. Like if you are part of a community and you're getting, you're having a good experience, suddenly cramming it with more people doesn't make it better. And we've even seen that past a very low point, it doesn't increase the time to first response. It doesn't increase the number of the likelihood of getting an accepted solution. These factors are driven by other things like the ratio of super users you have to members and those kinds of things. So this is really misguided school of thought that the more activity we have, the better. But for members, more activity makes it often harder to find the things that they're looking for. And very often we have more discussions, more posts, more content. For members, it's an overwhelming thing. And so just having more and more activity isn't necessarily better for members that just want to find the information that they're looking for. And my debate with Spinks, we're coming out from a different size, like Bevy with the tools that they're doing, that, very often if you attend an event on Bevy, you want to feel that sense of community belonging. But I think in most hosted brand online communities, the majority of people are looking for information. And I feel quite confident saying this because every survey I've done surveys with people that are on this call, for example. I've done surveys in, hundreds of clients at this point. There's academic research. It always says the same thing. The primary reason why people are visiting a community is they want information. And we, for some reason, we seem to be ignoring that. We seem to be thinking, okay, how do we build a better sense of belonging? And belonging isn't irrelevant, but let's focus on the big win first. And we've found time and time again, if we focus on the big win, if we focus on improving the ease that people can find information, if you measure the effort score, which is one of the most important scores you can be measuring today, if we apply things like cognitive search tools so people can easier find the content they want, if we remove things that are out of date, so there's less content that people have to browse through, we find that people are much more satisfied with their community experience than what they otherwise would be. So by taking, honestly, the contrary approach to what a lot of people are doing is how we're delivering the best results for our clients today. And this is difficult for us because community comes loaded with so many connotations of what it's supposed to be. But the reality is that we've got to serve our members in what they want best. And information is as valuable as, feeling a sense of belonging. Is as valuable as making friends. We don't get to decide what people should want. We get to satisfy what they need. And that's a great thing to be doing. So this comes back to the top members of the community, which is Almost every single community thrives when it has a number of top members that are actively engaged. And in the book, I put some benchmarks of how many top members you should have by the size of that community. These numbers are a little bit vague because our data on that is a little bit sketchy because we don't always know how many super users are in each group. But we ask around and we try to have some rough guidelines, but there's probably more flexibility in these metrics. The top members are the people that typically they want access to you, they want to feel they've had an impact, and sometimes they want to feel a sense of belonging with each other. But we found primarily the number one thing that people want is influence. They want that access, they want influence to the organization. And the more access and influence they feel they have, the more engaged that they become. And again, I think very often we get distracted here with different perks and those kind of things. But time and time again, we found that access and influence is the number one thing that super users want. And so when we can optimize for that, we get a lot more people engaging and participating exactly the right way. I think that answered the question.
Yeah, for sure. And it leads nicely on, you're just talking there about, the reward, and another hot topic is always, swag and giving stuff away. And you talk loads about this in the book, around what is value to members of the community and to be careful around, gifts and rewards. But I just wondered, have you had any experiences with some of your clients where you have made a transformation around, stopping a rewards program, or, stopping sending out so much swag, or the opposite, and just, with any results around that?
Yeah, there's been a client I've worked with this year that had to drastically scale down the support and the benefits they were providing for the top members, and they lost a lot of top members as a result. It's harder to take away a reward that's become expected. It really is. And that's why it's always dangerous to give rewards that are expensive for you to give. Like giving respect and attention costs nothing. Okay, it costs time, but it costs nothing, Making people feel amazing about their contributions costs nothing, but it makes people feel amazing. I mean, honestly, the best rewards are things that we don't even think about. I was working on one community with people that were creating and sharing videos with each other. And we got the top members together, and the reward that we gave them for their participating was access to a training course by a top video person on how to create better videos, how to share them, how to optimize them. And they loved that because it was access to a training course no one else got, and it made them better at doing what they were already doing today. And that was the most powerful reward I think I've ever seen given. And so for me, like we go swag, there's nothing particularly wrong with it except when it becomes expected. I think when people start expecting it and start determining how much they're going to participate based on how much swag they get, that's when you get into a very dangerous term. But things change all the time, and I think I'm learning to be more flexible. Like for a long time, I was of the position you should never pay your top contributors. You should motivate them and do it for free. I mean, if you watched the presentation by Microsoft a couple of months ago, maybe Susie can put it in the chat, you'll see what they've done with the gig model is amazing. They realized that they can't achieve all of their goals given the huge scope of what Microsoft is supporting just through this, feeling good rewards and those kind of things that they were offering. So they used a gig model. I can't remember how much they said they spent per person, but they paid for each of those contributors, and it achieved tremendous results. So I think there is a kind of, you've got to be flexible. I'm not as absolutist about these things as I used to be, but generally speaking, I think it's better if you don't pay your top members unless you're at such a scale, maybe that Spotify is perhaps, but such a scale where you need gig helpers for translation issues or to expand or to really get up to that level.
Yeah, to really scale. I'm conscious of time, and I know that we are hoping to give a couple of books away to those that have attended today. I just wanted to ask, though, because I have to ask about gamification. And again, this one, don't feel like you have to go too far into this, but it felt like you actually wrote an incredible amount of detail in the book. It's almost one of the most detailed aspects of the book. But I get the sense that you aren't massively convinced by it. And I just wondered whether, this was something you felt was really needed, or if you maybe do have a strong opinion on it.
I think gamification. I think I tried to follow what the research said in the book. So I had that literature review to begin with. I'm happy to share that review if people want it. I highlighted the pros and cons, when it works, and why it doesn't work. And then I presented a template that people can use to adapt to their own situation. Because there's a common problem with gamification systems where they have this exponential reward system. To get to level 1, you need 5 points, but after that, you need 10 points and 15 points and 50 points to reach the next levels. And members then get to a point within a couple of levels where they're like, oh, there's not really much point in me participating anymore because it's going to take me years to reach the next level. And so I wanted to highlight that issue and then really dive deep into the weeds about what a system looks like, some templates that people can use, and then ideally how to do it better. Because for me, it wasn't about gamification, it's about the rewards from participating and the different kinds of access that people can give. Points are part of it, but they're not the only part of it. So just having a template that people can work from. And what I found, it's easier for people to edit information than it is to come up with a whole new scheme from scratch. So having that example they can work backwards from, I felt would be most useful. Yeah.
Nice. All right, so I think we'll go to questions, but just before we do, I thought this quote, if anyone's unsure about whether they're going to buy Richard's book, so towards the end, Chapter 10, this is a quote from the book, Chapter 10 is going to pull together everything we have learned so far to create a clear and coherent community strategy. I'm going to help you develop your community strategy from scratch and ensure it's aligned to every possible best practice. So if you didn't have a reason to buy the book, then there it is there, because for the rest of that chapter, that's exactly what he does. All right, Blake, shall we, have you got some questions there that we could ask?
Yeah, so let me get going here on the questions. One of the interesting ones is a lot of times as community professionals that we're sort of also tasked with customer journey and really sort of understanding over that. So one of the questions from it was kind of like, what are the resources for customer journey and kind of how should community professionals sort of start to look at that to help them out?
Yeah, there's some great tools for that. I like the Smaply tool. So if you go to, I think it's smaply.com, maybe someone can put in there. I think that's it, but someone can check. So I like just laying out what the current customer journey is today, step by step. Like most brands have this already. If you don't, then make sure you get that. And then figure out, where does the community fit into this journey? Do people go through the whole customer onboarding journey first, and then are they introduced to the community? Or do they begin their journey in the community, seeing and learning about the product or the service first, and then become a customer? Or is it integrated deeply within that system? And so for me, the best results are when it's deeply integrated within them. Again, if you go to feedbe.com/build-your-community, you can find a template member journey there as well. And so we try to integrate it as closely as possible within that journey. When people, especially when people have just become a new customer of that product or service, they want information. They've got beginner questions to ask. They need that help. And we've worked with clients before where there's a mentoring group that newcomers join. And then you have a top member that are mentoring them for the first few questions that they go through, and things like that really, really help. So yeah, I would go to smaply.com, start fleshing out your journey and really integrate those things as closely together as possible.
Excellent. And then we've got a question from Matt. Matt, I just put you on the stage so you can just ask your question, so you don't have to just sit and chat.
Hello, I forgot my question now. I had two. Can I do both?
Sure.
Okay. My first question is, if you could change one thing on most community platforms, what would it be?
I think the data that most platforms give isn't good enough. I think it's really at the level of insight to break it down by segments and cohorts. It's rarely as automated as it needs to be. So I think the data side would be the thing I'd want to change the most.
Excellent, thank you. And my second one was online community stretched back to the earliest days of the internet. How has the role of community manager changed over time from your perspective?
How's it changed? I think it's become much more professionalized now than what it used to be. I really feel right now we're entering like the new era of building communities where communities are a mature tool. It's not so often as what is this thing? I think it's more like, okay, we've seen the examples of this, you know, we have an idea of how much to spend on this. And I think you've got these forces that are acting upon communities now, you know, in terms of like what kind of pressure you're under to deliver results. You know, you've got declining reach at the moment. That's going to present its own issues. Members want convenience before anything else. So if your community is the most convenient place, then that's a challenge as well you have to solve. The level of competition is getting higher. Why would people visit your community when they can go to a Stack Exchange site or a Reddit site or ask their colleagues or use a chatbot? Or, you know, there's like more competition now. So I think the harder work is more driven by more focus on the technology aspects. I think we've got a split between people that do engagement and people that do operations. And I think, yeah, those are the kind of trends that are kind of coalescing at the moment. But I really feel we've entered like the mature era of building online communities at the moment, and the skill set we need is completely different.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think some of the older communities were founded by someone with deep technical knowledge, enough to get a server online and the software installed. And I think the skill set definitely has changed from that, in terms of it's less about the technology and more about nurturing people.
Well, you find this a lot at events, you know, there's a lot of events I've been to where when I'm talking to people afterwards, they're like, yeah, it's really fun, but I'm not getting a lot from the talks. And that's not because the speakers are bad. It's that there's different levels now. Like the levels, you know, that people need are wildly different. I think Jamie posted about this on my site just the other day, actually. Like there's people are, you know, if you're working for a big brand community, you need breakdowns of case studies of examples that are like yours. And that's why talks like the Microsoft one from a few weeks ago that you can find on LinkedIn are so important, because, you know, they're really detailed breakdown in what these brands are doing. And if you are a community manager doing it for a hobby or for a relatively small organization, then you're not going to care about, you know, how to implement cognitive search, how to archive all of the past content, all the things that are really important to a lot of communities at the moment, or how to pull data from Tableau, you know, all these kind of things. So I find more and more the work that I'm doing at the consultancy level is work that doesn't get discussed as much at talks, because their desires, needs, and objectives are different. And I think more and more there's like this mature approach to building communities that we need a different skill set for.
Really appreciate that, Richard. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, and then up next, we've got Ilker. Ilker, I put you onto the stage, so if you're there, your question got like the most votes, so feel free. I know you're there and with us in Turkey today.
Hello, hi, and you know, thanks for this. I was actually sort of getting ready. I thought that, you know, I'd get some sort of screen time. Richard, hello, and thank you very much for your you know, for being a thought leader. You know, we refer to your work a lot. So the question is obviously the celebrated engagement trap that you have, you know, that you've talked about, and we refer to it a lot. So in the times of obviously online events and COVID, it has gone into, you know, the events have gone into extreme, you know, sort of, you know, heights in terms of numbers and in terms of, you know, the over communication and an event overdose, which everybody's complaining about. So we just wanted to know, as community managers, what's your take, how or engagement trap and the concepts around it in these interesting times that we're facing?
If I'm completely honest, I think we are overestimating the impact of COVID. I think just in terms of this online community, it's one like specific thing. Obviously, COVID's being a devastating thing. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a lot of things going back to the way they used to be. People are going to want to meet in person. They're going to want to attend events. I don't think there's going to be a huge shift there. But I do think we're going to see people being better at running online events. I think we're going to see people that are much better at engaging people online events. So I think right at the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people were doing this special COVID sections of their online community, and they rarely got used. They rarely got much attention. They rarely got much activity. So I wouldn't massively change the strategy for that. What I do think it's worth looking at is what are the broader trends that COVID has accelerated today. And there are some really interesting trends. More people working from home. What does that mean for how people are going to engage in communities? I've seen mobile traffic to a lot of communities drop. There's some communities that are naturally going to be a lot higher, some that's going to be lower. So I think there's going to be more people working from home. I think there's going to be more people that are looking to see what the benefits of a community is. I think we're going to see a rise in competition from new platforms that are emerging. So positioning of the community is more critical. So I don't have online or hybrid events specific advice because there's other people, especially on CMX and Bevy, that give that advice so much better than what I can. But I do think I wouldn't look at COVID. I look at what are the broader trends that are going on here and how do you design a community for that. And I think unique positioning is going to be important. I think unique value is going to be really, really important. I think figuring out how you make your community a convenience first. What is your community the most convenient thing for? How you do that is really important. And I think some of the platform vendors are in for a bad couple of years. And so how to be more flexible in the platforms. And also, if we're looking at trends, there's a really interesting one that's starting to emerge, which is we're getting less data than what we had before because of data privacy. And you're seeing these trends, it's starting in social media now where they're displaying how many likes, some of the influencers are getting. And so how would you prove the success of your community if you have less data, if you have no engagement metrics to share? So I think that could be really interesting to see as well. So I can't answer the question, but I think there's a bigger picture question here for that.
And thank you very much again, for being a
Thank you so much for the
really,
question.
really appreciate it. And Blake and Jamie, event as always. Thanks for allowing me to ask the question in person.
Great, thanks, Olga. All right, up next, I'll bring to the stage Shayna Summers, who all of you know. If you don't want to be on,
I love Shayna. Everyone does, actually.
All right, Shayna, you're on the stage. If you don't want to be on video, you don't have to be. You can just unmute. So I just wanted to make sure we get your question in.
Oh, Shayna.
You caught me. You caught me. Oh, I have the wrong camera, but that's okay. I'll just talk. No, you caught me as I was brushing my teeth. I actively listen. Oh, my question was basically, what do you think is to come for community managers in the future? And I gave it a little mini time frame where it says about 1 to 3 years. What do you think is the future of this profession and what people should expect?
Yeah, I think this profession, this is a great question, by the way. I think this profession is going to become more professionalized. I think we're going to have more standards that we aim for. I think a lot of people building communities for brands that are seeing this as like a loyalty or marketing thing are in for a rough ride. I think those that are doing it for support, success, loyalty, not loyalty, support, success, ideation, more visible things are going to find it an easier ride. But generally, I think we're going to see a big split between the people that do the engagement side, discussions, content, activities, and the people that do the operations side in terms of scaling, internal support, and those kinds of questions. I'm not expecting a massive sudden change, but I think it's going to be a steady professionalization, more standards, more clear benchmarks to aim for, better training. I hope we provide training courses. I know CMX does, other people do as well, and a steady increase in the number of brands that are building online communities. Yeah.
All right, great. Thanks for that question. And then up next, we're going to bring Amir to the stage. So Amir, you've got a great question, so feel free to open up your audio or video, whichever you prefer. We're putting you on the spot. So Amir, you're on the stage to ask your question.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Blake, and everybody else for this time. Thank you, Richard, very much for your explanations. I have two questions. The first one is what I'll cut the first one and just ask the second one. Others have better questions to ask. What is the trend you see in the industry builders for the next product builders? I mean, what's the next lithium per se, or the next HubSpot you think is going to be built and be the hit in the industry? Thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. If I knew the answer, I would invest heavily in it. What I think is there's not going to be, I think, hosted platform, that's a very mature space. But I think we're going to see new apps that are being acquired and the copycat effect. There's a lot of interesting tools that are around at the moment in terms of member blogging. Most of the major platforms offer pretty much the same thing at this point. So I think we're going to see some copycat effect, some new platforms and tools that are emerging. Yeah, I honestly don't know what's going to be the big thing. I just think we're going to see things like the icebreaker tool. That's really interesting from CMX last year. I thought that was interesting. But I don't know what's going to be the next smash here. I think we're going to see more integration with social media, and having a single stream of content and activity. Sorry, everyone, I have to go. I have another event I have to jump on right now. But thank you so much for your time. So I literally have to run. Thank you so much, everyone. And if you want to do the book giveaway or whatever, just let me know and I'll do whatever I need to. No worries. Sorry, I really have to go. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Richard. All right. So should we do the book giveaway now, right, Jamie?
Let's go for it.
Awesome.
Whoever's left. If you're here, you can maybe get one.
All right. So we're going to do the Wheel of Names. So we got, I think, a book for Europe, or Europe, Asia, and then I'll do one for North America. We don't have any for Greenland today, so sorry for those in Greenland. All right, so let me get, I'll just do, all right. So assume everybody can see the name or the screen here. So we're good, Jamie?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we'll do, this is called the Wheel of Names, and I'll just click it. Looks like Jamie Johnson Jr. came in. We're going to take them out so I don't get rid of him. I think Harry Potter left, so let's get rid of him. But I think everybody else looks good. So we're going to click this, and then we'll do the Europe winner first. So just let us know in chat if you live in Europe or Asia. Whoa, looks like it's going to be Simone. So Simone, let us know in chat where you're located.
That's North America.
North America. So Simone, I'll get you a book over to you. Very cool. And let's do one. So Simone wins the North American book. And so now we'll do for Europe and for Asia. Whoa. So where is Malcolm located out of?
Malcolm is in Scotland, so he's definitely in Europe.
There you go. So those are the two books that we have to give away. So very, very cool.
Good stuff. Thanks, Blake, for having me on. And just to let people know, the CMX Book Club, next up, we will be talking to John O'Bacon, who's always worth hearing from, written a number of books. So yeah, please register for the club there, and it should be early August that we're doing that. Thanks again, Blake. Thanks everyone.
Yeah, so my side, just a huge thanks to Jamie for helping out with this stuff. I think for the books of Richard, for me, it's like, the two other books is the books always know that are really good. There's like the books that are like in the land pile of like the ET or Atari game I just got nothing from. And then there's the other books where I'm constantly reviewing them or putting notes or little like stuff where they're like great reference material where you're always, you've read them, but you're always going back to reference different chapters or different passages. And so Richard's work is like always the gift that keeps giving there. Jamie does a CMX book club, so you can definitely follow him on Twitter. Always doing amazing stuff, really great stuff there. Connect with them on LinkedIn if you have any questions, stuff like that. And then we put the link in the chat where you can get Richard's book. On the CMX side, we got all sorts of amazing events coming up. Don't miss any of those. The CMX event that I really would spike out is going to be on July 7th. And there's an all-day Back to the Future event, but at 5:00 p.m., we've got like one of the creators of Back to the Future, Bob Gale himself, is going to be on. So that's going to be really amazing. So look in your email for the Back to the Future Bevy event. That's on July 7th. Going to be some crazy stuff. And Jamie's on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, MySpace, Friendster. Probably forgot some, but you can always reach them there.
My kids might be.
Yeah, exactly. He does a lot of amazing stuff with Spotify, also CMX host. But it's so great to have everybody here in the family. Be sure to spread the word, let other people know about it. Reach out to me, Jamie, let us know like what you thought of the event here today. And just a huge thanks to everyone for here. We always try to make it engaging, bring people up to the stage, all that great stuff. Today is Thursday, Throwback Thursday as well. It's also World Canada Day, so or whatever you would say like in Canada. So thanks there as well. But just we're one big family on the community side. We're all here for each other, lots to learn, lots to grow from. And just for all the community professionals from around the world, don't have any champagne, got Powerade. So I will toast everyone, a toast for making this all possible. We all help each other for this generation, for next generations. All the great work helps everybody else out. So a huge thank you for what you do out in the community space. Have a great rest of your weekend or your 4th of July holiday. If you're in Scotland, enjoy this Euro Cup stuff. Don't know how your team's doing. All that great stuff. Have a great, yeah, like, don't bring it up. So have a great rest of your day, weekend, all that stuff. We'll see you in the future.